October 15th, 1935, the back room of Rao's restaurant in East Harlem. Lucky Luciano sat at the head of the table, the most powerful mobster in America, the man who'd reorganized the Italian families into the Commission, the architect of modern organized crime. Across from him sat Bumpy Johnson, 28 years old, rising power in Harlem, the man who'd survived Dutch Schultz's death squad and sent them running. Lucky slid a piece of paper across the table. Numbers written in pencil, very large numbers. This is what you'd make working with us, managing Harlem for the Commission. You'd be rich, Bumpy. Richer than you ever imagined. Bumpy looked at the paper, didn't touch it. Just looked. You'd report directly to me. Keep order. Manage the numbers. Handle distribution. We provide protection, connections, muscle when you need it. You provide organization and local knowledge. Bumpy was quiet for a long moment. Then he pushed the paper back across the table. No. Lucky Luciano's smile faded. Nobody said no to Lucky Luciano, not in 1935. Not when he controlled everything from bootlegging to labor unions to politicians. You're making a mistake, Bumpy. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. What happened in that room changed the relationship between the Italian Mafia and Harlem forever. Not because Bumpy said no, but because of why he said no. And because Lucky Luciano, against every instinct, against every rule of his world, respected that answer. This is the story of the deal that never happened, and how Bumpy Johnson's refusal to be bought created a partnership that redefined power in New York. To understand why Bumpy said no to guaranteed wealth, you need to understand where he came from and what he'd fought to build. Bumpy Johnson arrived in Harlem in 1919, a teenager from South Carolina running from a murder charge that wasn't his fault. He'd defended a friend from a white mob. Someone died. The law didn't care about context. Harlem saved him, gave him sanctuary, taught him the game. By the early 1930s, he was working for Madame Stephanie St. Clair, the Queen of Numbers. She taught him something crucial. In Harlem, respect mattered more than fear. Loyalty mattered more than money. Community mattered more than empire. When Dutch Schultz tried to take over Harlem's numbers in 1933, it wasn't just a business dispute. It was an invasion. White mobsters trying to extract wealth from a black community without giving anything back. Bumpy stopped Dutch. Not with an army. With intelligence, strategy, and the support of people who trusted him. The Cotton Club basement incident, the ace of spades. Dutch backed down because Bumpy proved something. Harlem couldn't be conquered. It could only be earned. By 1935, Bumpy was becoming a legend. But he wasn't rich. Not by mob standards. He made decent money from numbers, from protection, from various enterprises. But he was constantly fighting. Fighting white mobsters who wanted Harlem's money. Fighting corrupt cops who wanted bribes. Fighting to keep his community from being exploited. And then Lucky Luciano called a meeting. Lucky had just reorganized the Italian families. The old mustache Petes, the old guard Sicilian bosses who refused to work with non-Italians, were gone. Dead or exiled. Lucky had a new vision. Organized crime as a business. No more wars over territory. No more ethnic barriers. Just profit, cooperation, structure. He'd made deals with Jewish gangsters, like Meyer Lansky, with Irish mobsters. He was building an empire that transcended ethnicity, and he saw opportunity in Harlem. The numbers racket was generating millions. If properly organized, properly protected, properly connected to the Commission's resources, it could generate tens of millions. He didn't want to conquer Harlem. Dutch had tried that, and failed. Lucky was smarter. He wanted to partner with Harlem, but on his terms. October 15th, 1935. Lucky sent word through intermediaries. He wanted to meet Bumpy Johnson. Neutral ground. No threats. Just business. Bumpy agreed. Not because he was eager, but because refusing would be insulting. And insulting Lucky Luciano was dangerous. They met at Rouse, a restaurant in East Harlem that served as neutral territory. Lucky brought 2 bodyguards. Bumpy came alone. A power move, a statement. "I'm not afraid of you." Lucky noticed. "You got balls, coming here alone. I got sense. If you wanted me dead, bodyguards wouldn't help." Lucky laughed. "I like you already. Have a seat." They sat. Lucky ordered wine. Good Italian wine that cost more than most Harlem residents made in a month. He poured 2 glasses. "You know why I wanted to meet? You want Harlem. I want to work with Harlem. There's a difference." Lucky leaned forward. Dutch tried to take it. He failed. "I'm not Dutch. I don't take. I partner." "What kind of partnership?" Lucky explained his vision. The commission would provide protection from other families, access to judges, cops, politicians, resources for expansion, distribution networks, money laundering operations. In exchange, Bumpy would manage day-to-day operations in Harlem, keep the numbers running smoothly, keep the peace, kick up a percentage to the commission, report to Lucky on major decisions. You'd be wealthy, Bumpy. Real wealth, not street money, legitimate wealth. We're talking investments, real estate, businesses. You'd die rich. Bumpy listened, didn't interrupt. Let Lucky paint the picture. When Lucky finished, he slid that piece of paper across the table. The numbers. Conservative estimates of what Bumpy would make in the first year alone. Enough money to buy a mansion, to never worry again, to set up his family for generations. Bumpy looked at the numbers, saw the future Lucky was offering, and he saw something else, something Lucky didn't say, but was implied in every word. Control. Working for the commission meant reporting to Lucky, meant clearing decisions, meant Harlem's money flowing through Italian hands before coming back, meant being rich, but not being free. Bumpy pushed the paper back. No. The room temperature dropped. Lucky's bodyguards tensed. Nobody refused Lucky Luciano. "You understand what you're turning down?" "I understand perfectly. You're offering me money in exchange for autonomy. You want to own Harlem without calling it ownership. You want me to be your manager, not your partner." That's exactly what it is." Bumpy's voice was calm but firm. "You keep saying partnership. But in your partnership, you make the rules. You approve the decisions. You take the biggest cut. That's not partnership, Lucky. That's employment. You'd rather stay small, stay struggling? I'd rather stay free. I'd rather build something that belongs to my community, not something that extracts from my community for your benefit." Lucky sat back, studied Bumpy. Most men in Bumpy's position would have taken the deal. The money was real. The protection was real. The opportunity was legitimate. "You think you can do better on your own?" "I think I can do it with dignity. Dutch wanted to conquer Harlem. You want to lease it. I want to own it. Not for profit. For protection. For keeping my people from being exploited by people who see them as resources, not as human beings." The silence stretched. Lucky's face was unreadable. He could order Bumpy killed. Right here. Right now. One word, and it would be done. Instead, Lucky started laughing. Deep, genuine laughter. "You got more balls than brains, Bumpy. You know that?" "I've been told. You know what the smart move is here? The smart move is to take my deal, to get rich, to use that money and protection to build your community. You can't protect people if you're dead broke and fighting everyone. Can't protect them if I'm a puppet either. People in Harlem trust me because I'm one of them. The moment I become your employee, I lose that trust. And without trust, I'm just another gangster extracting money. I'm Dutch with a different face." Lucky poured more wine, drank slowly, thinking. "What if I offered you real partnership? Equal terms? Equal terms with the most powerful mobster in America? That's not equal, Lucky. That's charity, and I don't want charity. What do you want? Respect. Recognition that Harlem is mine to run as I see fit. You want a percentage of the numbers? Fine. But I decide how they're run. I decide who works. I decide how we treat the community. You get money. I get autonomy. Lucky stared at Bumpy for a long time. This was unprecedented. In the commission, hierarchy was everything. Nobody dictated terms to bosses. Nobody demanded autonomy and got it. You understand what you're asking. You're asking me to let a black gangster run a major territory independently while paying tribute. My own captains don't have that much freedom. Then give them more freedom, or don't. But those are my terms. And if I refuse? Bumpy stood up. Then I stay small and free, and you keep trying to find someone in Harlem who'll take your deal. But here's the problem, Lucky. Anyone who takes that deal loses credibility in Harlem. Because Harlem knows. We know when someone's selling us out. And when they figure out your manager is just a front, they'll stop cooperating. They'll make life difficult, not violently. Just enough resistance to make your operation unprofitable. He turned to leave. Bumpy, sit down. Bumpy stopped, turned, looked at Lucky. Sit. Bumpy sat. Lucky was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. Not a threatening smile. A genuine smile of respect. You know why I got rid of the Mustache Pete's? The old bosses who refused to work with non-Italians? Because they were dinosaurs. Because they couldn't adapt. They saw the world in black and white. Italian versus everyone else. Old ways versus new ways. They couldn't understand that power comes from cooperation, not domination. Lucky leaned forward. You're teaching me the same lesson. I came here thinking I'd offer you money and you'd fall in line, but you're showing me that Harlem isn't for sale, not to Dutch, not to me, not to anyone. So we have no deal. We have a better deal. Here's my offer. You run Harlem, completely autonomous. You make decisions. You manage operations. You take care of your people. In exchange, you pay a percentage to the commission, not as tribute, as partnership. We provide protection from other families trying to move in. We provide connections when you need them. But we don't interfere in how you run things. Bumpy studied Lucky's face. What's the catch? No catch, except one thing. If the feds come after you, we can't protect you from that. And if you start a war that brings heat on all of us, we'll have a problem. I don't start wars. I finish them. Lucky extended his hand. Then we have a deal? Bumpy looked at the hand, thought about what he was agreeing to, thought about what he was refusing to agree to. He shook. We have a deal. What happened in that room in October 1935 changed organized crime history. For the first time, a major mob boss recognized an African-American gangster as an autonomous equal, not an employee, not a subordinate, a partner. The commission was furious. When Lucky told them he'd given Bumpy Johnson autonomy over Harlem, several bosses objected. You let a colored control territory. I let a smart man control territory he already controlled. I just made it official and got a cut. This sets a precedent. This sets a precedent that we work with reality, not against it. Bumpy owns Harlem. Not because we gave it to him, because he took it. Because the people there trust him. We can fight that reality and lose money, or we can accept it and make money. I choose profit. The bosses grumbled. But Lucky was the boss of bosses. His word was final. For Bumpy, the deal meant something different. It meant legitimacy without submission. It meant he could build Harlem's numbers operation into something that benefited the community. Policy banks that employed thousands. Numbers runners who fed their families. Protection that kept outside predators away. Was he still a criminal? Yes. Did he still run an illegal gambling operation? Yes. But he did it on his terms, with dignity, with respect for his community. Over the next 3 decades, Bumpy and Lucky maintained their arrangement. Even after Lucky was deported to Italy in 1946, the deal held. The commission honored it because it worked. Harlem ran smoothly. Money flowed. No wars. No problems. In 1962, a young reporter asked Bumpy about his relationship with the Italian families. "You work for them? I work with them. There's a difference." "What difference?" "Working for someone means they own you. Working with someone means you own yourself. I own myself. Always have. Always will. But you pay them money. I pay for protection and cooperation. That's not tribute. That's business. Smart business." The reporter pressed. "But Lucky Luciano offered you much more money in 1935. Everyone knows that story. Why did you turn it down?" Bumpy smiled. "Because the money he offered came with chains, and I'd rather be poor and free than rich and owned." Lucky understood that. That's why he changed the deal. That's why we worked together for 30 years. Because he respected what I wouldn't sell. Your freedom? My community's freedom. When you work for the mob as a manager, you extract. You take money out of the community and give it to bosses who don't care about the people suffering. When you work with the mob as an equal, you can build. You can use that money to create jobs, protect people, invest in the neighborhood. Same operation. Different philosophy. So you were a gangster with a conscience? I was a man trying to protect my people in a world that gave us no legal options. Was I perfect? No. Did I break laws? Yes. But I never sold out my community for personal gain. And that's more than most people in power can say. October 15th, 1935. The day Bumpy Johnson said no to guaranteed wealth. The day he demanded respect instead of money. The day Lucky Luciano learned that some things can't be bought, only earned. That meeting created a template. Other mob bosses saw that working with community leaders, not against them, was more profitable than conquest. It didn't end exploitation, didn't end crime, but it established boundaries, rules, recognition that power comes in many forms. Bumpy Johnson could have been rich in 1935. Could have taken Lucky's first offer and lived in luxury, but he would have been owned. He would have lost the trust of his community. He would have become what he'd spent his whole life fighting against. Instead, he stayed free, built something on his terms, and in doing so, he changed how the Mafia interacted with Harlem forever. Not through violence, through principle. Through understanding that real power isn't about how much money you have. It's about how much of yourself you keep. If this story of principle over profit moved you, subscribe for more untold stories of Bumpy Johnson's legendary integrity. Drop a like if you believe freedom is worth more than wealth. What would you have done in that room? Let me know in the comments below.